My name is Erik, and I've lived in the small town of Nördlingen, Germany for most of my life. Nestled within a vast crater, the town has always had a strange atmosphere, but I never paid much attention. Life here was quiet, peaceful even, until I stumbled upon that forum. It all started innocently enough one night. I was scrolling through the usual posts when I saw a discussion about an abandoned tunnel just outside the city walls. They called it Tunnel 21, something forgotten since the time when the town had a secret military base during the war. A guy on the forum claimed he had footage of something unnatural inside. It was buried deep within the post, no catchy title, just a subtle mention. That's what hooked me. I followed the link, downloaded the file, and opened it. At first, it was just shaky, low-quality footage of the tunnel's interior, nothing out of the ordinary. Dark walls, ancient stone. But then something changed. Shadows began to writhe on the walls, moving in ways that made no sense. It wasn't just a camera illusion. I paused, rewound, and watched again. It was there, something moving in the darkness. Curiosity overtook me. The next day, I grabbed a flashlight, my old hiking boots, and headed to the tunnel. The entrance was easy to find, just as described. Hidden behind dense ivy, the stone structure looked untouched by time. There was no reason for anyone to have sealed it, yet there it was, and there I was. As soon as I stepped inside, the temperature dropped immediately. The walls were damp, and the air heavy. Each step echoed louder than it should. I tried to laugh it off, thinking, it's just an old tunnel, Erik. Nothing to worry about. But the deeper I went, the dimmer the flashlight seemed to get. The shadows clung to the edges denser, as if they were alive. Then, about 100 meters in, I noticed something on the wall. Graffiti. No, it wasn't graffiti. It was symbols. Ancient, angular, deeply etched into the stone. I ran my finger over one, cold to the touch, as if the stone had never warmed in the sun. My heart started to race. That's when I noticed the flashlight flickering, sputtering, and I hadn't brought extra batteries. I heard a sound, a faint scratching. My body froze, ears straining. It was coming from further down the tunnel. I should have turned back then, but I didn't. I needed to know. It was then I saw him, just beyond the reach of the light, a figure standing completely still. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, but I felt it watching me. "Who's there?" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. No answer. I took another step closer, but when the beam of light finally hit the spot, there was nothing there. Just like that. But the scratching sound continued, now coming from behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Panic flooded me. I looked at my phone. No signal, of course. Nördlingen always had signal issues this deep underground. That's when I remembered the forum. I opened the thread, quickly typed a message. "I'm in Tunnel 21. Something's not right. I'm not alone." As soon as I hit send, the scratching grew louder, closer. I ran. I don't even remember when I dropped the flashlight, but suddenly I was in complete darkness. My feet were pounding on the cold stone floor as I bolted, and the sound behind me turned into heavy footsteps. I reached the entrance, practically throwing myself out of the tunnel, collapsing onto the grass outside. My heart was racing as I looked back. The tunnel was dark, silent, and empty. Or so it seemed. I got home that night, still trembling, but safe. I went to check the forum. My post had vanished. Not a trace. I scrolled through the topic, completely wiped. In the following days, I tried to forget, but something had changed. At night, I began to hear sounds. Not footsteps, but whispers. Soft voices, unintelligible, slithering through the cracks in the walls. I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, shadows that weren't cast by anything. My reflection in the mirror didn't always move with me. One night, after yet another sleepless night, I decided to confront it. I grabbed my phone, opened the front camera, and started recording. My eyes scanned the room, capturing every shadow, every movement. At first, nothing. But then, upon reviewing the footage, I saw it. Standing just behind me, a figure barely visible, cloaked in shadows. I turned around quickly. Nothing there. That's when I realized I never left the tunnel, or maybe it never let me go. The shadows were here now, in my house, on my skin, in my mind. They moved when I didn't. They whispered things I couldn't understand, but I knew they were watching me. I tried to warn others on the forum, but my messages wouldn't go through. Every thread I created vanished within minutes, and no one responded to my pleas for help. I'm writing this now, hoping someone finds it before it's too late. The shadows are closer than ever.
I've always lived in Ballater, Scotland, a quiet little town tucked away in the Highlands where everything feels frozen in time. It's peaceful for the most part. I would sit in the same little pub every evening after work, drinking a beer, talking to the same old faces. Nothing ever happened here. That was until I found that chat room. It started off innocently enough. You know how it is? You're bored, restless, maybe looking for a little adventure without leaving the comfort of your chair. I stumbled across this old forum dedicated to paranormal experiences. I was never really into that sort of thing. More of a skeptic, honestly. But there was something different about this place. It wasn't filled with the usual nonsense. No over-the-top ghost stories, no typical horror cliches. Just people seemingly normal sharing strange occurrences. And then there was one post that caught my attention. The title was The Watcher. The author described living in a small town and how someone had started watching him through his screen. The words were simple, they carried a weight, like the guy was practically begging for someone to believe him. It wasn't one of those exaggerated monster tales. It was subtle, unnerving. Once you're seen, he wrote, you can't be unseen. Curiosity got the best of me. I replied, asking for more details. I didn't know what to expect, but within minutes, I got a response. The user, called Watcher444, claimed to know where I was, said he'd seen me, that I'd already been marked. Marked? I laughed to myself, thinking it was some weird joke. I replied, all right, Watcher, if you know where I am, tell me. Describe the pub I'm in. Seconds later, a reply. There's a fireplace to your left. 2 men and a woman sitting at the bar. You're wearing a blue jacket. My heart skipped a beat. I froze. I was wearing a blue jacket, and there was a fireplace to my left. But I hadn't told anyone where I was, hadn't posted any pictures, nothing. It was a lucky guess, I said to myself, but I couldn't shake the creeping unease starting to crawl up my spine. For a moment, I thought about leaving, but I stayed, determined to test him. All right, Watcher, you've got my attention. Now what? Watcher 444 responded again, this time slower. Go home, you'll see. Now my heart was racing. The pub, once a cozy refuge, suddenly felt suffocating. I paid my tab and stepped out into the cold night air, the familiar streets of Ballater suddenly feeling foreign. My house wasn't far, just a 10-minute walk. But tonight, it felt like an eternity. Every shadow seemed to stretch, to twist and change under the dim streetlights. When I got home, everything was as it should be. My keys jingled as I slotted them into the lock. The hallway light flickered, casting the same warm glow as always. I laughed at myself for being so jittery, for letting some random forum get to me. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from the forum. I hadn't opened the app, hadn't touched my phone since I'd left the pub. The message simply read, check your living room. I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to. But I went. I walked into the room, and everything seemed normal. The worn-out couch, the cluttered coffee table full of books, everything was in its place. But something felt wrong, like there was an invisible weight in the air. Then I saw it. My laptop, which I hadn't touched since the morning, was on. The screen displayed a live feed of my own living room. from above, as if someone was watching me from the ceiling. My stomach churned. How was this possible? The camera on my laptop wasn't on. It couldn't be recording. I rushed to shut it down, yanking the cord and pulling the battery out. But when I looked up, the feed was still running, frozen, still showing me standing in my own living room. And then the figure appeared. Just a faint silhouette at first, barely noticeable. It was standing in the farthest corner of the screen, watching me. My heart pounded faster than my mind could process. The silhouette didn't move, didn't breathe. It just stood there, as if waiting for me to acknowledge its presence. I turned, expecting to see someone standing in the corner of my room, but there was nothing, just empty space. When I looked back at the screen, the figure was closer. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at the laptop, my mind screaming at me to run, but my legs glued to the floor. Then the final message popped up in the chat. I warned you. Once you're seen, you can't be unseen. The screen went black. I didn't know what it was, some twisted prank, a virus, or something else entirely, but it didn't stop there. Every time I leave the house, I feel eyes on me. Every time I open my laptop, the feed returns, showing my own home, my own movements, even when the camera is off. There's no escaping it.
I was born and raised in Tromsø, Norway. It's not a big city, but it's cold, isolated. I've always loved that feeling of being far from the rest of the world, from the noise, from the hustle and bustle. Tromsø is the kind of place you think protects you, wrapping you in the calm of winter and the sky filled with the northern lights. Or at least, that's what I thought. It all started with something mundane, a video website. I signed up for an online contest, something simple. The idea was to capture footage of the northern lights and edit it to create an engaging video. It made sense to me since the dancing lights in the sky are the most beautiful thing we have here. Winning wasn't my priority. I just wanted to have fun. But the whole thing turned into something I still can't explain. On the first night, I went out with my camera to record the auroras, a spectacle I was so familiar with. The town was covered in snow. The air was icy against my skin, but I was used to it. I walked to the nearest hill, where there wasn't much light interference. As I was adjusting the camera, something flickered on the screen, a shape like a shadow passing in the distance very quickly. I thought it was a reflection, a technical error, and continued. Yet, each time I tried to record, that thing returned, getting closer. It was impossible to define what it was. Something wasn't right. The next day, I reviewed the footage. The shadows were there, clear, moving between the lights, with a fluidity that made me feel nauseous. But what truly disturbed me was when I realized that the shadows seemed to be watching me. The auroras continued to dance, but those dark forms stared at me, even when they shouldn't have. Of course, I ignored it. My logical mind said it was just a technical glitch. Maybe the lens was dirty, or the cold had interfered. But a part of me knew it wasn't that. I decided to try again that night. I returned to the same hill, the camera pointed at the sky. While I was setting up the tripod, I glanced at the horizon and my heart nearly stopped. It wasn't a shadow. It was a figure, standing there in the distance, in the middle of the snow. Yet, when I looked at the camera screen, the figure didn't appear, just the lights. I closed my eyes for a second, and when I opened them, it was closer. Still, I couldn't define what it was, but something in the way it moved, or rather, in the way it didn't move, froze me. Back in my apartment, I rushed to the computer to check the footage. The northern lights remained beautiful, serene, but that shadow or figure was there, clearer this time. I could see a human silhouette. It looked like it was staring directly at me. My heart raced. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, that thing was there, lurking, as if it were drawing closer. The next morning, I received a message on the contest website. It was an anonymous video. I clicked, anxious to see something related to the competition, but what I saw was shocking. It was footage from outside my apartment. That same shadow was standing there, at the entrance, staring at my window. The video ended abruptly. I looked out the window, but of course, there was no one there. Tromsø in those winter days was silent, peaceful, but I could no longer believe that. I turned off the computer, but as soon as I tried to step away, the notification sound echoed. Another message. The next video wasn't from outside, it was from the hallway of my building. That thing was just a few meters from my door, motionless. I could hear the wind outside, but the inside of the building was completely silent. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but the line was dead. And then, another video came. This one showed the view of the hallway, but from inside my door. I ran to the entrance, opened the door forcefully, but there was nothing. Just the dark, silent corridor. I hurried back to the computer, and the screen was black. Instead of the videos, there was only a flashing text, nonsensical, almost like a code, but mixed with disconnected phrases. What disturbed me the most was the final line, "You shouldn't have looked." What does that mean? What shouldn't I have looked at? The auroras? The shadows? The figure that's haunting me? Or maybe it was me who shouldn't have seen all of this. I don't know anymore. I don't know what is real or if this is some sort of elaborate nightmare. But the worst part is that now, when I look out the window, I can see the aurora. It shines so beautifully, as always. And I can see the shadow standing there in the midst of the lights. Except this time it's smiling. I guess I will never leave home again.